welcome to the 1L Club. This is the last one for the semester, and this is about acing finals. Again, today we're going to be talking about the different ways to make sure you are going through that finals period in an efficient manner to maximize your results on these upcoming finals. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So the first thing is an overview of what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about your prep for the exam, the day of the exam, during the exam, and after the exam. My first question is, how would you summarize exam success into 4 requirements? Number 1, deep understanding of the law. 2, developed test-taking skills. 3, memorization of the rules. And then lastly, confidence in your ability. All right, we're going to break each one of those down, but there's a lot of things we talked about throughout the semester, and all of those things are going to fit into one of these 4 categories. But to me, this is the pie of success for final exam. All right, let's go ahead and jump into these. And we're going to talk about prepping for the exam. The first one is be one with the law. Now, again, I know at the time of being in this session or viewing this video, everybody's at a different point of the semester. For those that are already literally in the middle of finals, you may have limited time to do some of these things, so you have to pick where you need to focus your time mostly on. But if finals are still coming up for you, you do still have a lot of valuable time to do all of these things. But step number 1 is that you're one with the law. You really understand the material that you've been taught. So within being one with the law, you have update your outlines, fill in the gaps, right? The gaps are throughout the year for your various subjects. There might be topics or a few that fell through the cracks, right? Maybe it was a busy time that week or that month, or maybe it was just difficult and you didn't quite all the way get it. You want to start with filling in those gaps. Then you want to do a general review of the entire subject and all the material. All right. You can't stay in there for forever. So you do have to keep a pace with you. You have to make sure you're prioritizing the heavily tested topics, right? And you want to go through all of the material in that way as a general review. Create that 1-pager of your outline, right? For those that have come to the previous sessions, we've talked about those 1-page cheat sheets to help you with issue spotting on the day of the exam. So those are good to create, right, prior to the exam. Now, as far as updating your outline, what I want to tell students is that at this point of the semester, it depends on where you're at, right, to see how much time you should spend. If you're still going to classes, right, like Janelle just mentioned a second ago, well, you should still be finishing your outline because there's still content that you're taking in. So you have to still work on your outline, right? But Maya just mentioned, I've started my finals already. Well, if I'm already in my finals period, at that point, I'll probably forego any more development of my outline and I'll work with what I have, and I'll be spending a lot of my time doing practice exams just to make sure I'm seeing things in action and developing those skills in time for the exam. So again, that's why it's always like, we want to keep up with our outlines, but if you find that yourself in that position where they've been neglected, be careful not to just over focus on now updating those outlines because that might not translate to the best results. Okay, and then as a reminder, if anybody is struggling with filling in the gaps or doing that general review for your subject, Legally Fit has crash courses that are literally made for this moment to be able to conceptualize all that material in a short time frame. All right, so that's number 1, be one with the law. Number 2, see the law in action. All right, it's one thing to know the elements of battery. It's another thing to then go, as you know, through the torts exam and be able to see it, issue spot it, and articulate it in discussion. So what you want to do, everybody, is not just know the law and be able to talk about it, but you have to really see it in action and see the different ways it can be triggered and tested. And the way that you do this is taking exams with the full support of your outlines and sample answers with the focus on learning. All right? So take a screenshot of this, look at it. It's telling you what to do and how to do it. The big focus here is on learning, not testing yourself, not seeing like how good am I with the law or do I get everything right now. When you're doing an exam in this mode, you're really focused on learning. Okay, when do you do this? Now until the day before the exam. As Marcus mentioned, we don't do anything the day before the exam. That's just for memorization, in my opinion, right? But up until that day before, you can do practice exams in this fashion. Okay, so that's seeing the law in action. Next is a hyper focus on skills. Okay, so you've become one with the law, you've seen it in action, you've learned it, you've seen how it's tested. Well, now what about my skills? All right, am I avoiding being conclusory? Am I doing a thorough analysis? Am I executing well during my pre-writing phase? Right, we talked about this in a previous session. The pre-writing phase is that first 15 to like 30 minutes, depending on the length of the essay on your exam. But that's the reading, issue spotting, and outlining your question, basically the game planning phase before you get to typing. So these are the type of things you're looking at when you're hyper focusing on skills. Here, you can do exams in more of a mock exam fashion. No outlines, timed, right? Because now you're really seeing, can I practice and develop these skills under the time conditions? So when now is the time to do those and factor those in. How many? I want everybody to aim to do at least one per class, right? So Maya said that her exam was on Thursday for obligations, which is a version of contracts. So today is Tuesday. I would do a timed exam at this point. It would have to be today, right? If we haven't done one yet, because Wednesday is now technically the day before the exam, and that's not the best time to do practice exams, especially in a mock exam fashion. All right, recommended approach. Be sure to do essays in practice mode before you advance to mock exam mode. Prioritize your focus on improving your skills. Practice mode is the mode to prioritize your understanding of the law. So just know what your priority is. You're always doing both. You're always working on your skills and the law when doing a practice test. But why am I here? Am I in practice mode to focus on seeing the law in action and understanding this better? Or am I in now test mode to work on my skills, right? Of can I do this under time conditions and how's my speed and all of those things. Next, prep for the exam, pack it in. So this is referring to the memorization aspect of the exam. There's a lot of law that you ultimately have to memorize and regurgitate as triggered on the exam. So how to do it, flashcards, typing the rules out, whiteboarding it, actor style, where you look at the paper, you look at a rule, and then you put it away and you try to say it out loud for memory, and you keep doing that until it sticks. You can sit there and record the rules and then play it back and listen to it. So how do I recommend going about, or when do I recommend you go about memorizing? You should do spot memorization as you're going, right? So when you're outlining, take a section and try to outline it. When you're doing a practice essay, you come across, oh, this essay just tested negligence per se. Like, let me memorize this rule as I'm doing it right now. So that's spot memorization. You're basically memorizing things as you're naturally coming across it in other tasks like practice essay or review of your outline. Then, after you do your spot memorization, you can have your intense memorization that's just literally I'm sitting down, packing it all in, and I typically advise students do that 1 to 2 days before the exam. For me, I did so much spot memorization and I spent so much time truly understanding the law that I was comfortable with just one full day before the exam to focus on memorization. But everybody needs to tweak this to their preparation levels and their skill level for memorization. If you are really good with memorization, the one day should be fine. Maybe if you struggle with memorization, maybe two. So make sure you tailor that to yourself, but that was my approach. Like, try the different things that work best for you, and then don't be, right? Yeah, like, feel weird if you're doing something different. It's all about leaning into what works for you. All right, so here's the next one. I love this one. Find your swagger. So this is referring back to the confidence in your ability. Why? Confidence improves your performance, where anxiety decreases your performance. So what's the goal? Your goal is to walk into the exam feeling confident and ready. Now, when I say that, people might have a skewed idea of what it means to be ready for your final exam. Readiness doesn't mean you are an expert in every area of law or that you have perfect test-taking skills. When I look back at my 1L work product and the essays that I wrote that earned me A's, I'm shocked because it is so far removed from where I'm at now. It's developed so much more. I'm shocked that those got me A's, right? But the idea was that I was ready, right? That was good for that level of my development, right? That was good for a 1L. So remember that readiness, what it means is you have put in the work and you have developed. You have done the case briefing and readings. You've dove into the law. You've done practice tests, right? And now it's your time to showcase what you've learned. So try to tap into that for all the students that may be feeling a little extra nervous about finals, because it's normal to have some butterflies. But if you're feeling a little too anxious to where it's impacting your performance, just remember you've put in the work, and now this is just simply time to showcase the work that you've put in. So, how do you find your swagger? How do you stay confident? Avoid negative people and thoughts. And not just negative people, also like extremely anxious people, right? Like if there's that group of friends and the study buddies that you know that are just like super anxious and just high strung, finals period is a good time to avoid those crowds because that energy is contagious. I can remember this firsthand that I have some close friends to this day from law school that when it was finals period, is like, I can't be around y'all because y'all are just like bouncing off the walls and extremely nervous. And that throws me off of my groove. So be careful with the people and the thoughts. Next, right, reverse that with positive thoughts and self pep talks. Some of us are really good at looking in the mirror and getting ourselves hyped up, so if that's your superpower, lean into it. If you do practice and can practice positive thoughts and optimism about how finals are going to go ahead and lean into it. Next, affirmations and mantras, right? For those that are familiar with it, you know what it is. But yeah, talk to yourself good, nicely, and give yourself, right, something that you're just focused on when the negative thoughts do happen, right? It's like, no, I am capable. I am capable, whatever it may be. Next was one of my favorites, a Get Hype playlist. So this was part of my routine for the bar exam, for law school, that I would escape in music, right? The minutes leading up to an exam. And you find that song, right? Whether it's Eye of the Tiger. I remember I had a final right where Katy Perry's Roar came out, and I was just blasting that nonstop before the final. Just whatever song can just kind of get you in the mood and inspire you, I think is a good tool to use during finals, especially like the day of. So Get Hype playlist. There we go. Congratulations, Post Malone. That's a good one. All right, so next is reflecting on your why and what got you here. All right, this is a big one. So you can be pushed and motivated by like, man, why did I come here? Why did I come to law school to begin with? And it's like, yeah, like, man, this means so much to me. And like leaning into that. And then also remembering what got you here, which should then remind you of how you're capable to do well in this space. Like, they don't just let anybody into law school. You've had to have demonstrated high intelligence, high IQ at previous levels of your education in order to be here. So make sure you remember that you're here for a reason and that you are capable of performing. All right. And then lastly is motivational speeches. YouTube is great for a lot of things. And one thing they have a plethora of is speeches from famous people, right? Keynote speeches, award acceptance speeches, whatever it may be. And those can be very moving. So something just to tap into if you are moved by those, to consider watching one or two of those during finals period. So to wrap up and sum up this section, I think it's very, very important to build and protect your confidence during finals, because I think it can make a big difference. And you go into that and you go in excited, ready to showcase, as opposed to going in and second guessing yourself and being unsure of yourself, right? And then sometimes letting those negative thoughts spiral into anxiety that can be debilitating. So we're going to avoid that, stay confident, stay strong, and stride through this thing. All right, so let's go ahead next. Oh, and then we have one more as far as prep for the exam, and that's study schedule. We talked about that last week in great detail. It's very important that you have a schedule set for your finals period. So go ahead and take a screenshot of this, and if you want more detail on it, there's a previous 1L Club session where we go in detail about how to build your study schedule. All right, but you want to know what you're studying on each day during this jam-packed period of finals. All right, so we're going to talk about now the day before the exam, during, and the day after. So the day before the exam, make sure you download exam files if available. All right, the essay portion of your exam is likely going to be on something like ExamSoft or Examplify, and you have to download a file that you'll be working off of. So if available the day before, knock that out of the way so it's not something that you're worried about the day of. I have personal horror stories about waiting to the day of to download exam files. Avoid that and do it early if you can. Next, prioritize memorization, as discussed, the day before the exam. The day before the exam should be light. Again, it's like a championship game. Like, you don't want to have a tiring, exhausting study day right before the big show. So make sure you're studying in a way that's good, and memorization is a little bit lighter of a task than jumping into practice essays, right? And things like that. So prioritize memorization. Next, avoid practice essay and mock exams. And lastly, protect your confidence. You have to protect your confidence. All right, day of exam. So, number one, keep the morning as smooth as possible. Clothes picked out the night before. Leave early so you're not fighting traffic and running late. All things that can like contribute to your comfort level, right? If you're already starting the day behind, you're fighting traffic, it's already putting you in an anxious position before the exam even starts. And we don't need anything to add on already to the anxiety of taking a law school final. So do what you can in your power to stay cool, calm, and collected leading up to the exam. I remember I had, during finals, like I had a final exams outfit, right? Set for each of my finals, put away, set out. So for each of my, let's say, 5 finals, I had an outfit ready for it, so I didn't have to think about anything the day of. How about review the day of? So if you have a morning exam, here's a potential study routine for you. Eat, take a walk, and get mentally prepared in the morning. Studying in the morning is optional. Keep it light. Just wake up your brain. 30 minutes max. All right. So this is a little different than what some students may do, mostly based off of like anxiety and not knowing what else to do. They'll like study really hard. Like I remember, we might have a 9 a.m. or a 10 a.m. final, and some students were waking up at like 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. to like cram in a whole bunch more. And I found that to be more counterproductive than productive. The morning of, it's like I want to wake up. If my exam is at 10, I want to wake up 7:30, start moving comfortably, getting ready, do a little light memorization or light, review of my material just to wake up my brain. And then I want to go in and perform. But try not to overdo it the morning of. I think taking a walk, getting grounded before you take the exam, like those are all things that I find to be very helpful for students. Now, what if you have an evening exam? That's a little bit different, right? Your exam is now at 6 p.m., right, or later. So you do have this whole day that you can't just kind of like relax the entire day. That would be very difficult to do. So there, I would add in big picture review and memorization in the morning, but then stop with ample time to go into the exam fresh-minded. You don't want to have a full day of studying and intense studying and then go into an exam. That's going to be hard to do. You want to be fresh-minded so you can critically think. All right, next one, another important one, diet for the day of the exam. Avoid foods that are going to have you running to the restroom, right? We don't need no bubble guts. We don't need no gas coming out during the exam and all the things, right? So make sure you're eating things that you know your body doesn't reject, but instead accepts, and things that won't have you using the facilities during that 2-hour, 3-hour exam. Okay, so yeah, also eat something that will fuel you, not give you the itis. So you guys know diet at this point. I recommend things like, if it's the morning, something light, maybe some eggs, maybe some protein, right? Some sausage, some bacon, keep it light. And then, you can have a really big, good meal after that exam is over. And then if you haven't downloaded your exams the day before, go ahead and download them the day of. All right, so now let's talk about during the exam. Again, if you want more detail on this, go to one of the previous 1L Club sessions, look at the title, find the one where we would talk about this, because we have talked about this, but here's a quick refresher. Start by jotting down your one-pager. All right, start the exam by, hey, this is contracts. All right, and this is the big picture of it, and here are my options for what can be triggered. Do the multiple choice portion first. Diagram fact patterns to help with reading comprehension. Have a strategy so you're not just winging it through the questions, and do not rush. Remember, multiple choice is typically what makes the biggest difference in the curve, right? It's easier for the essay points to typically be in a range, right? Because you can essentially talk your way and finesse your way through an essay. A lot of times, the curve is really made by who got an extra 3 multiple choice questions right, or who got an extra 5, right? That can go a long way. So don't rush the multiple choice because that could be the difference between your B plus and A minus. Okay. So next, A portion, essay portion. Read, issue spot, and outline first. That's your pre-writing phase. Also, identify the prioritized issues. You got to know where the points are. All issues on an exam cannot be treated equally. There are certain sections that are going to be worth more points than others. Identify those so you make sure you spend the right time, right amount of time in the right places. Identify the type of exam and the appropriate strategy. So, I can give you a quick refresh and recap on that. There are what I would label as 3 different types of law school or bar exams out there. One, it's a racehorse. A racehorse is a true test. That's a test of time management. There are a ton of issues to discuss, like 10 different things you got to discuss, right? And so, in that situation, when you know it's a racehorse, your strategy has to be more quick. I'm doing less counter arguments, only where it's like I really need to do this counter argument, but other than that, I'm going through this faster. I'm being mindful of maybe when I want to do more of a summary style analysis instead of breaking something down by its elements. So overall, you're just doing things that allow you to move faster to actually be able to complete this racehorse exam. On the other hand, you have an exam that could be called an organization puzzle. An organization puzzle is this is not a racehorse that has, 10 issues, but this is like a unique scenario and there's a lot of facts and I have to really sit and kind of figure out how am I going to go about answering this, right? You see this often in contracts because like there could be a web of a situation. It's like, okay, how am I going to like strategically like break this down to be able to discuss it? When you have an organization puzzle, what do you need to do? Make sure you're spending a little extra time in that pre-writing phase to figure out how you're going to go through that exam. Okay. So don't be in a rush to get to writing because you need to plan that out. And then the last one is an in-depth analysis. In-depth analysis is when your professor has created an exam that's a hyper focus on a particular topic or two. And as like an exact opposite of a racehorse with in-depth analysis, you want to make sure you are fleshing out those arguments, fleshing out those counter arguments, and being a little bit more long-winded with your discussion. And so again, like these are all the different things that you want to be mindful of when you're starting the exam, not just like going with the flow and just, reading it and just going after it. You want to be intentional about where you're spending your time and how you're spending it. All right, so that's the essay portion. Make sure you demonstrate good time management. You finish the exam. The last thing about during the exam, I think this is a really good one, handling test anxiety. What are the causes for test anxiety? You are forgetting rules during the exam. Your mind is wandering. There's fear of failure, feeling the pressure of the test environment, right? There could be some other causes as well. Here are some solutions. One, properly preparing for exams. And when you do prepare for exams properly, again, lean into that. Don't let there just be a default, no matter what, resting anxiety. If you've done the work, let that be the reminder, right? One of the things that I always used as a train of thought to keep myself from spiraling is that if I was on an exam and let's say I saw something that was a curveball, it threw me off, what would I not do? I would not be like, oh my God, like, I don't know what this is. What's going to happen? Like, oh my God, I'm going to, and then the wandering, I'm going to fail out of law school, all these things. If I got something that was a curveball that I didn't know and I started to feel myself go there, it's like, no, DeAndré, if this is throwing you off, it's throwing off everybody because you did the work, you studied. So relax and just think your way through this and figure out what you need to do. So that grounded me and then allowed me to think critically as opposed to judging myself or going down a path of what am I doing. Next, do mock exams in a test-like environment. So it's always good to avoid test anxiety by mimicking the exam before you go into it so you can get familiar with that vibe. Next, find mental mantras to use during the exam, like one that I just shared, right? And just different ways to pivot out of certain thoughts that you see cause the anxiety. And then lastly, and I've done this before in an exam, take a break if the anxiety is really mounting. I've gotten into a situation before where I felt like my fingers were literally going numb out of like the nervousness that I was feeling at that moment. And it was going to be hard for me to continue in that fashion. So what I did was just like take a second to pause, put my pen down. I went to the bathroom, took a second, which you feel like you have no time to do during a law school exam. But in under those circumstances, I was better off doing that than continuing in this like, you know, half capabilities that I had. I was not even thinking clearly and I couldn't feel my fingers. Like that's not a good way to do the exam. So it ended up working out really well. Like being able to reset, talk to myself, gave me the clarity and the push to now finish that exam under a little bit more control. So take a break if needed. All right, so that's during the exam. And then here's the last one, after the exam, right? Simple instructions here, 3 things. Number 1, do not talk about the exam with your friends. Resist the temptation. Even though I say this, what are most people going to do? Talk with their friends about the exam afterwards. But there's no point, okay? So do not talk about the exam with your friends. Number 2, don't go back to your outline to guess your performance. So also, yeah, don't finish that Torx exam and then go like, I wonder if it was this. I wonder if it was that, okay? Next, 3, move on immediately so you can quickly recharge and get ready for the next exam. So these tips kind of, all played to each other and built up to what you should do, which is move on and get ready for the next. When you're in finals period, it's quick turnover. As soon as you finish torts, right, or whatever exam you have a limited amount of time until that next exam, and all those precious minutes and hours either need to be recharging and resetting from that exhausting exam or preparing for the next one. But staying connected to the exam that you just took does no benefit, does no value, okay? And so one last thing that I'll share is that after each exam, make sure you just stay hungry. You're staying hungry into the end of finals. And for all of my 1Ls, you'll notice that, again, this is a marathon. And by that last final, a lot of us are going to feel really tired. So you have to stay strong and fight for every point until the end of finals period. And so for me, let's say I finished one exam and I felt good about how that exam went. You don't want to get too comfortable, right? It's like, all right, that was good, but I'm not done yet. I got to go ahead and knock out this next one. I still have a mission. I'm still in the middle of it. So let's go. Like, don't get too comfortable. If I had an exam and I didn't feel like it went too well, I would say, all right, I have an opportunity to make up for that on this next exam. So put that behind me. Don't get in my head about how that didn't go as well as I wanted to. Let's go ahead and get ready for this next one to make up for it. And then that's your focus. So again, it's really just a hyper focus on staying locked in and motivated about the next exam. As soon as one exam is over, put it behind you. Thank you for joining the 1L Club session on acing final exams. Remember, finals period is a marathon, and the intangible things that you do to prepare yourself for this 2 or 2.5 week period can go a long way with your performance. So make sure you have those routines down for the day before exams, the day of exams, during exams, and after. Last, I want to congratulate you all on finishing the 1L Club series. This is it. After this video, you are now ready to go into finals. We are wishing you the best of luck and hope that you have an amazing final exam experience. Make sure you leave it all out there on the paper and go through finals in a way where you are showcasing what you have learned and the skills that you have developed over this semester. Learn more about Legally Fit and Break into Law School in the description.